going to talk about sleep. And of course, like every subject that I do has a lot of references and ideas. And so this one's a little bit deeper than I did do one already on sleep hygiene that was more like a parenting one and how to help your kiddos sleep and things like that. And of course, if you haven't visited the YouTube channel, there's a whole bunch of workshops on there for any other subject that you want to even check out. So of course, I reference those all the time. So, oh, there's already one on that, or there's already one on this. And so we'll talk about those, I'm sure, as they come up. But, you know, right after our daylight savings time, anybody sleep deprived and like going, wait, what just happened? We just like, I got an hour ripped out of my body, you know, out of the sun, out of my routine, out of, you know, and the children, it's like, so they get to just automatically go to school an hour earlier. It's kind of crazy. After you learn what circadian rhythm is with this workshop and everything that we talk about today, you'll probably want to hopefully not ever do daylight savings again. Now, I love it and I hate it, right? We love it. We love the light. We have exactly 12 hours now from 7:30 to 7:30, pretty much, give or take a couple of minutes, sunrise and sunset. So I can provide the YouTube channel here in a little bit. I'd have to find the link. So yes, I will put that in the chat at the end. And so basically, we start out with the single most effective thing we can do to reset our body and brain is to reset our body and brain is to sleep, but it's really effective sleep too. So we can sleep and we can pretend that we're sleeping good, but sometimes we're not. So we're going to learn about all those things. So let me get to it here. And by the way, now that we're recording, I'm Carol and I work for Blomquist. I'm out of the Orem office full time. So if you haven't seen me before, then you'll get to know me today. So I've done lots of the workshops and it's just been kind of a fun mission for me this last year to really knock some of these out and put them on YouTube. I am a clinical mental health counselor. I'm a CFLE, which is a certified family life educator with a tenure, and I'm a clinical mental health integrated medicine certified provider. So certified integrated medicine provider, and that's where a lot of my training comes from, all of this other stuff. So here's mental health, and then here's this everything else, the gut, which is next Tuesday, actually Monday. The inside before we go outside. So I do a lot of inside work, a lot. So here's the inside. We gotta heal the inside before we can heal the outside, right? So if we've got something going on inside, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the liver, a little bit about the gut on Monday, a little bit about here and there, then it really does make a difference. I mean, it's definitely gut things. So if you're interested in the gut and why it is connected to anxiety and sleep and mental health, then you can watch Monday's webinar, and you can sign up for that too, the same way you sign up for this live on our workshop, under workshops on our website. So just a reminder, if you don't want to be in the video, you can turn off your camera, the video that's being recorded right now, in case you don't want to be. If you do, great, you'll be on YouTube. Okay. So let's get to why we sleep, why we need to sleep. Circadian rhythm, we're going to go over that. We're going to go over REM sleep. We're going to go over why the brain needs it and what happens when it's depleted. The brain is depleted literally from sleep. Don't we all want to go back to this baby time in our life where we had no no worries, right? Our needs were taken care of. We're going to talk about supplements and melatonin and caffeine and how to, little bit of BFF your sleep, right? Befriend your sleep. And then I'll go over tips in taking back power and how we take back power, literally power. We want to make sure that our power is controlled, literally. So I threw this in here, because here's the brain, right? So healing the brain, all we're doing in the first C is clarity. So we're going to get some clarity, okay? Then we can connect the dots and then you'll have control over it later. But first we have to have clarity. That's what these education workshops are about. They're clarity, like hopefully they're clear and hopefully you can look into it more. You're going to have to read, you're going to have to research your own things, especially like the supplements or how to get into REM sleep, your circadian rhythm. You can look into all of those things. I always reference tons of links and books and other TED Talks, stuff like that. So clarity. And then if we don't have clarity in the brain, then we don't have connection and then we have no control. Now closure is like clear out there. We have closure on that thing and then we can close it out and just so this is where it's like, okay, now there's a lot of, when I teach the anxiety program, there's like a lot of lists of things that happen when you have anxiety or panic or depression and a lot of sleep disturbances are on there, but this is what's going on usually with a lot of people at night. And I'm going to, talk about a little bit about the adrenals, cortisol levels that happen at night. If you're having anxiety and these kind of things at night, then there's something going on for sure. And that's what a lot of people do experience. And it's like, why is it that we have high cortisol levels at night? It's supposed to be the lowest ever in the evening. And you're supposed to have the highest cortisol levels at 7:30 to 10 a.m. in the morning. So cortisol levels send you into anxiety. So just a little bit of that. Okay, so here's some stats. Here's some children, teens, they're not happy stats. They're just not. It's like, and then here's adults. A lot of adults get less than 7 hours of sleep, obviously. And these are American stats, okay? 68% of Americans struggle with sleep once a week, at least. So struggle, define what struggle means, but 41% use over-the-counter sleep aids. Now, I guarantee since this stat, was brought up, it's way more than that. It's just gone up, and I'm going to go over melatonin in a minute. It's gone up and up and up and up, like by 400%. It's insane, right? But so is road rage, and so is irritability, and so is a lot of things. So just so you know, and yeah, of course, it's been the last 2 years at our anniversary of going into a pandemic, and our anniversary coming up in exactly 3 days of our start of our 2 years. It was our earthquake too. So think about what's happened in the last couple of years. That's been totally different than normal. So this is just blue light exposure over here, like 16 minutes, okay? I tell teens this and kids in my office all the time. When we look at our phones in the middle of the night or before we go to sleep for just a second, maybe we're laying there and we think, oh, we're going to look at the time, or we're going to look at Facebook, or we're going to look at something. 30 seconds of that reduces your sleep of your REM sleep by 16 minutes. So it's like, it causes 7.6 more sleep disturbances during the night, okay? So 16 minutes and 7.6 more disturbances than if we didn't look at our phone at all. And it only takes seconds, under 30 seconds of exposure of that blue light, okay? So there's a whole article on this, just that, like there's lots of things. Now, see, this always comes up. If you want to look at families and technology, that's on YouTube. It's one of my newest ones of how technology and families, how it's affecting us. Okay. Now think about the last 2 years, how it's affected you and your family. So this is just, yeah, blue light exposure, which is TV and your phone. So, and a computer, whatever. So just look at these stats and be, okay, these are not the most current because we don't have them. It takes a long time to get those out. And this is what we're going to talk about mostly. This is a book by Matthew Walker. He is not a doctor, but he has a PhD. He's a professor. And he has talked about sleep for 30 years. And I've got my book marked here, but this is an old version of this book that, you know, I get used books, I get new books, I get all kinds of, you know, monthly. So, you know, this is just some of his work here, which is a lot of his work is in this book. So, and a lot of everybody else, he just, you know, it's a collaborative book of course, a lot of research. So, that he references. So the physical and mental impairments caused by one night's bad sleep. We all know what one bad night of sleep does to us. It impairs us. It causes us to be less focused during the day. There's all kinds of things that it happens. Now, one night, okay. And when I tell people, it's like one night, you had a bad night, you know, a kiddo or a bad dream or something. It's like, okay, one night we have a hard time. So that means that we know that we're going to go to bed earlier the next night. We're going to get a nap in. We're going to get some self-soothing in, some self-care. So, but it's equal to not having food or exercise, any movement. So it's equal to that. Now there's been research done on people that don't have food or sleep and which one can they, you know, go longer without. We can't go without sleep. I mean, we know that. There's deep, and I won't get into, you know, the delusions or hallucinations or things that happen when we don't sleep. Okay. So let's talk about circadian rhythm. Now, I'm sure you've heard of this. If you haven't, it's new, great. That's awesome because you're going to learn what circadian rhythm is. It's basically our cycle of events from, you know, 9 p.m. Up, you know, even this one starts at 6 p.m. So it goes through the whole cycle of 12, you know, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And so, but really, you know, this one starts, you know, back up. It actually starts at 5 p.m. But so here's the 6 a.m., right? Here's this full cycle of, okay, here's this. And so you go into whatever you start on this scale is like, okay, this is when we're supposed to be doing something. So like 2:30, you know, best coordination. We are actually, you're supposed to like math, anything that you're going to do with the left brain, you want very early in the morning. So 10 to noon, you want to do things that are going to be logical and mathematical. So yeah, the whole gamut here of early morning to evening. It is the noon and the midnight. There is just these cycles, and they all have to do with something inside of our body and outside of our body. So the sun, and when the moon's out, right? So we'll get into, a little bit of melatonin, and we'll get into, okay, shift work. What about shift work? What about graveyard, work? But the thing is melatonin doesn't stop generating until up right here at 7:30. So that's when it stops. If you stop it with light, which is the normal circadian rhythm. If you have not woke up to an alarm clock for many, many years, you're in circadian rhythm. You shouldn't have to wake up to an alarm clock, actually. So you go with the seasons, you go with the sun. Now that doesn't always happen, right? When it's 5 p.m. and it's dark in the winter, does that mean we go to bed? Not necessarily, not anymore. We used to a little bit more, right? Go to bed way earlier in the winter. But this is, so if 7:30 is when melatonin stops, and we're still moving through to 8:30, and 10 a.m. is the most alert. And remember, that's when our cortisol levels are the highest. The reason why we're most alert is cortisol levels and dopamine is the highest. Then starting school at 8:30 isn't probably a good idea. And this week, we just jumped to 7:30. So think about that. Go with the seasons, manage stress. If you want to talk about stress, I had quite a few people like the stress workshop that I did last. So it's on YouTube too. So here's some more on this, okay? So I know you can't see this screen. It's really tiny, but it just for kicks and giggles, AM, PM, right? So think about PM. So 12 to 11, okay? The heart, this is what it does. The small intestine, the bladder, the kidneys, the reproductive system, all of these. And so liver is AM, okay? The lungs, the large intestine, the stomach, the spleen. So everything actually goes into rhythm of when it kicks in. You think about first thing in the morning, what are you going to do? The bladder and the kidneys kick in, okay? That's because melatonin has stopped, literally. So light is the brake pedal to melatonin. So I teach kiddos because they don't listen to their parents all the time. Sometimes they hopefully listen to me, but I teach them about their eyelids. I'm like, okay, close your eyes and like, how thin are your eyelids? They're very thin for a reason. And so we want to get exposure to light within 10 minutes of waking. It's very important. And I listen to Huberman. That's called Huberman Labs. Dr. Huberman, Hubberman, I think. Yeah, Huberman Labs. He's got a great podcast. He's a neuroscientist. He's awesome. And I've listened, and that's where actually I was listening to that one and came across this book many months ago, but several months ago. And so this book, Why We Sleep. And so he talks about why it's so important to get light. He talks about how to do our energy in our focus. And so I've listened to multiple ones of his podcasts about focus, which I'm going to be doing a PowerPoint on focus. And so the point is we have to have a lot of light. So I bring in as much light as possible the first 8 hours of our waking. So open windows, all the lights on, lamp on, everything on. Sometimes we sit in the dark and it's not really helpful with low light. We're like, oh, we don't want all the light, but we really need it the first 8 hours of waking. So at night, no blue light, no orange, so a soft orange light. If anything, I have my salt lamp back here. I have a salt lamp in my office because for that purpose, to explain that soft orange light, a salt lamp is the only thing that I ever recommend. No light of any other kind. If someone has to get up or they have to get up to find something or to read for a minute, it's a very, very soft light. If you have to get up in the middle of the night, when we talk about some tools later on how to break your cycle of getting up at, waking up at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. and not being able to go to sleep, there's some things but light is one of the worst things you can do. Because remember, it stops melatonin. So relaxing the body, doing any kind of relaxation stuff is good. So in the PM, these are all things in the PM before you sleep, before you fall asleep. So anything there? Okay. going to keep you muted, background noise. Okay, so we're going to go into REM sleep now. Okay, and NREM sleep, you know, is just this non-rapid eye movement. Okay, but we're going to focus on where the rapid eye movement is, because that's crucial. But of course, this is the cycle that you have to get to REM sleep. So this is just a little, I guess, a picture of how this all works, right? So these are the brain waves. So look at how rapid these brain waves are. It's similar to being awake. How awesome. Your sensory functions are active. This is when we breathe deep. This is when we dream. This is where we're having memories. This is where it's like, you know, into a giant movie screen, it says on here. So it's our dreams. So it's super important to get to that part. Okay. But look, it's not much different than rapid brainwaves when we're awake. It's cool. So this is what rapid eye movement is. Okay. You generally enter it about 90 minutes after initial falling asleep. We get into them, and I'll show you the next slide, where the last part of our sleep, which is the early morning, is the most important, actually. So what happens if we go to sleep at midnight or 1 or 2? Oh my gosh, it's you know, on purpose, or it's not because we're working shift work. It's because we're staying up late. So, you know, teenagers and other people, we stay up late on purpose. Everything after midnight takes an extra hour to make up for in your body. Okay. So say you went about a 1, you're going to need 2 hours of extra sleep to make up for that hour that we missed. Super important. So, and then to get through, and it's like, well, what if I sleep in? I don't know, you know, it's like, what if I just go? But what happens is your circadian rhythm gets off. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen often, and get into cycles of that. So during the final sleep phase, your brain becomes more active, like I just showed you. This is when dreams, we jerk, we have a heart rate, we have blood pressure. If you've ever had a Fitbit on, you can see when you're going into REM sleep because of breathing. So if you have a Fitbit on your wrist, it shows you. It's like, it's amazing how much you can, and the reason why it can track that is because of your pulse and your blood pressure and your breathing and your everything. So you can tell when that happens, and when you're turning over, and when you're done with the REM cycle. So in the REM cycle, you are paralyzed except for your brain and your eyes, basically. Now that's normal. Some people don't, and they act out their dreams, and that's a whole other, you know, workshop. But if you're supposed to be paralyzed, the minute you're done with the REM cycle, you're supposed to turn over, wake up a little bit, turn over, scramble from it, and then go right back to sleep. That's normal. So it's like, oh, how many times, I ask people, how many times do you wake up in the middle of the night? Well, 4 or 5. Great. You're in 5 cycles of REM sleep. But if you stay awake more than just a few seconds or a minute, then that's the problem. If you wake up and you're wide awake, then we need to track your sleep. You need to track it. Like, how many times do you wake up? How long do you stay awake? Now, if that's a Fitbit or you just writing it down, but it would be helpful to track it a little bit. Just for knowledge, remember clarity. You've got to have clarity first. So it's okay, is what I'm saying, is that you're supposed to roll over. You're supposed to just have a moment where you become unparalyzed, because I'm always stiff, right? And you're like, oh, got to roll over. And then you go back to sleep. And then you go into another cycle. Let's see, anything else on here? So REM plays an important role in memory function, brain stuff, processing information. This is where it will go into long-term memory, and it won't be in short-term memory. So you remember, your dreams are usually short-term. You lose them within 30 seconds or 3 minutes of after waking up, and you're like, oh, I had a really weird dream. And if you remember right then, and you tell someone else, or you're like, oh, I had a really weird dream. But the rest of the day, I almost guarantee you won't remember your dreams. They go into long-term memory. But you can't really, they're in short-term memory and they're gone, or they go into long-term memory where you can't retrieve them until you're in sleep again. Gosh, there's so much to that. Yeah. So this is the REM pruning cycle. What was I just gonna? Yeah, now I can't. The synapse pruning stage of. So this is an example of what I'm talking about. Cycle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these red lines are the REM time that we're sleeping, and why our eyes have to go back and forth. It is actually a pruning stage of repairing the brain, and I'm going to go into that. So reducing pain, literally pain and traumatic events from the day. Okay. If we haven't processed them during the day, guess what they do? Come out in your dreams, in your subconscious, by the way. So what you don't write down, what you don't talk about, what you don't process during the day, that day, it goes into your subconscious, your unconscious. Okay. So we want to, but it can be repaired a little bit, right? REM cycle. Our brain actually shrinks over 20% every single night if we're getting these cycles. It shrinks because it gets rid of inflammation and toxins. Super important. If we could all teach our kids how important this is. America, our culture, doesn't find that sleep is important as much as other countries. It's quite sad. We need to really remember this is the one and only one thing that if you did anything about, it would improve everything else. So it helps us decode facial expressions. Isn't that crazy? That's scientific. It's crazy. So emotion, right? Facial expressions improves problem solving, of course, and creativity. Improves memory, of course. Improves motor task, muscle memory. So that's what our brain is doing, so we can face the next day. So of course, what do you think? What happens when we don't have REM? And that's linked to autism, to dementia, to when you're using a substance, especially THC and cannabis, you don't have REM sleep as much. You don't repair the brain. It's probably why the brain, the gray matter in the brain shrinks when you're using that. So that's a whole other awesome subject too. But okay, so more on this brain and body. If REM sleep and sleep deprivation altogether is not happening, these are just some of the scientific proof that we have that happens to the brain and body. So what happens is our hormones actually, the hormone that makes us hungry actually swells up. So we're gonna gain more weight if we are sleep deprived. It suppresses, okay, this swells up the concentration of the hormone that makes us hungry. Then it suppresses the hormone that signals food satisfaction. So they both go in together, right? So like we're gonna keep eating a lot more if we are sleep deprived. We have slow reaction. We know we have comparisons of a drunk driver and a sleep deprived driver. There's very little if we have people that haven't slept in many hours, what happens to their driving. It's very, very, very not good. So this is a real important one. This is where there's a myth about this, that depression and mood issues are the result of not sleeping, but it's actually, so I said it wrong. So sleep deprived, so call it insomnia. There's 70 sleep disorders. So one of them is insomnia. Insomnia actually causes the depression of mood, not depression causes insomnia. Okay. So if you have some depression and mood issues, it's because of the sleep deprived brain. It causes that. So we think, oh, well, I have some depression and that's why I'm not sleeping. No, it's you're not sleeping and that's why you have depression. Got it? Now you're all really confused. So you can chat me at any time during any of this workshop too with questions, comments, but we are going to take some at the end. So you can chat them now, we can answer them and talk about them too, or you can just write them down and we can go through them at the end. So, okay, so leaves us to predators, okay? So think about back in the day when we were cavemen and cavewomen. What happened when we were sleep deprived? We were not very good. You were probably, if you're sleep deprived, you actually don't wake up as well, right? In cases that you need to. So it's like, okay, we weren't very good at fighting off our predators if we were sleep deprived. Okay. So insulin, microbiome. Okay, so I'm going to get into that in the gut next week on Monday. So this microbiome is something, the bile in our liver and in our gut. The microbiome is super, super important. And if you don't know what that is, oh my gosh, learn about the gut and take my, but high blood pressure. Okay. So here's high blood pressure. Does high blood pressure, is that a result from sleep deprived? Yes. That one is also, if you have high blood pressure, you're going to have way more anxiety, you're going to have other issues, and it does not help us sleep. So there is some medication that is given for that a little bit, and it brings your blood pressure down so you can sleep a little better. But so if you have high blood pressure, you're going to have sleep apnea, you're going to probably have sleep issues, you're going to have weight issues, you're going to have all kinds of things and high blood pressure issues. Now, yeah, there's some things that are genetic and there's some things that aren't. There's some things that if you correct this, this, and this, guess what? When it goes away, then it's not genetic. It's not genetic at all. We think it's a genetic component, but wait, what if we heal our body, then it's not a genetic component anymore. So of course, when we're sleep deprived, we don't have memory as sharp as memory. We have memory loss. So memorizing. So it worsens our memorizing before and after learning. That's a very vague statement, but that's just a basic. There's a whole chapter on that of like, okay, so if we are needing to memorize something, it worsens it before and after learning. So think of our students, right? If you have a bad day of sleeping or 2 or 3, we're not memorizing things before and after learning. Here's some more consequences. Disrupts our rhythm, of course, like I talked about, the substance abuse, relapse, disturbs our rhythms associated with physical, mental disorders. Went through that. It kills melatonin. Remember, if we have any kind of, we don't have the regular rhythm of our hormone, our natural hormone of melatonin releasing when it's supposed to. So it gets all whacked up, right? Good sleep can maximize problems, solve problems, enhance memory, like we've already talked about. It impairs the brain and function of burnout. So less than 7 to 8 hours of sleep is linked to increased heart disease, stroke, cancer, depression, inflammatory bowel disease, lowers immune system, diabetes, and many more. So the bowel disease, the IBS, is like, here's the gut. Remember the biome, the bile from the liver and all those kind of things. Remember that the first so many hours of sleep and those last ones where we actually get the liver, the gallbladder, the pH balance, and I'm at the bottom of this screen now, goes back to restoration. It restores our pH balance. It takes 8 full hours to get back to the right pH balance after all the damage we did during the day. So, you know, my Dr. Pepper or it's a 3 something pH balance, and we need to be at a 7. So it takes all night to do that. And it takes all night for the liver, the gallbladder to repair itself, to restore and cleanse. So we have to now, sorry, but we have to actually cleanse our livers, and our gut and our stomach, and, you know, do a liver cleanse, a gut cleanse, sometimes outside of sleep, because of how much pesticides, how much stuff is coming in, how much toxins we inhale every day, all this stuff. So if we're not getting sleep on top of that, we're going to have some serious long-term issues of liver issues. I'm in a live free liver and gallbladder summit right now. That's exactly what it's saying again, you know. So I take these summits for integrated medicine, and it's like, okay, this is what mental health is doing to us physically, right? Bring it together. Okay, any chats so far? Go ahead and chat if you need to. And I know I go fast. I always tell everybody, everybody that knows me, these go really, really fast. So sometimes I breathe for a second, but there's lots of information. So just do your best at keeping up, and then knowing that you're going to have the PowerPoint and watch it again. So one little point about the adrenals. Here's the adrenals, right? So cortisol, your stress hormone. And here's the circadian rhythm little picture here again. If you think, oh, okay, here's 6 p.m., 6 a.m., right? So here's all the way over. So it's like, okay, here's the blood pressure. Oh, here's when the melatonin stops. Okay, so coordination. I love these. It's just kind of like, when's our body temperature going to change? So yeah, there's a lot to do with this. So I'll go over this, and then I'll answer that question about, like, okay, what is it that we need 8 hours? Why do we need 8 hours of sleep? Well, look at this rhythm. It is a total body rhythm that, and that's a good point that I don't bring out in this workshop very much, is what if we're sleeping too much? Because our body that means you're completely off rhythm. Your eyes are not waking up with the sun, right? And your eyelids are thin. You should be waking up. If you go over more than 9 hours, then you're not on rhythm. Like I said, if you're not waking up to an alarm, there's a depletion in your body. And usually it's some kind of supplement, nutritional, supplement like this. So what do? We improve sleep. We change our relationship with stress. It doesn't say change stress. It says change your relationship with stress. And that was my last workshop. Eliminating processed foods, anything after 7, if we can just eliminate food, if you can make that your goal after 7, you will see a huge difference. Okay. Now, why do I say that? Why would you want to stop eating at 7 p.m. and not eat again until 10 or 11 or 12 even? So anytime we can get 16 hours of not having to process our food, not processed food, but just to give our bowels and our gut a rest, it's actually very good to intermittent fast. It's very, very, very good for our whole system. So the more you don't eat from 7 p.m. till 7, even from 7 to 7, I mean, that's 12 hours. So it's like this big myth that breakfast has to happen. Well, the thing is if we were used to eating at 5 p.m. in the winter with, being on a farm and having no electricity, we ate at 5 p.m. because it was dark. or we eat at 4. And then we finished up our chores and we ate at 5. And then we started winding down and we were asleep by 7 or 8 p.m. Then eating at 7 a.m. in the morning when the sun came up again. Okay, great. But do you see the long period of time where 5 to 7 a.m.? I mean, that was normal. It was very, very normal. You didn't stumble around the house and go to the kitchen and make yourself something else to eat. You just went to bed. You read and you went to bed. And so that was very healthy. So we want to go 12 to 16 hours. I mean, I try to do it at least 3 times a week. So you can do that on the weekends or on, 2 days during the week. And that just gives yourself a break so you stay on rhythm. Okay, so 12 hours, 15 hours, it's something's really off. That's not normal to go over your 9 hours of sleep. And you can chat me about that later. There could be a whole bunch of reasons why that's happening. And so here's the energy one. So a B complex is your key, but these are the B vitamins inside of the B complex, B5, 6, and 12. Actually, B3 is niacin, super, super important. So it's a B complex, right? And then vitamin C and magnesium glycinate is the kind that I always recommend, the glycinate. So we're going to get into that, but low sugar diet and low caffeine. So I highlighted that red because we're going to talk about caffeine for a minute. We're just going to have a little tiny fun little exercise on the next slide. But let me hurry and read this chat. So if a Fitbit, I really know how much sleep I'm getting. Sometimes I'll get to bed. Yeah. So Fitbit's going to tell you pretty close to exact. It blows my mind when I had one. I was like, whoa. It tells you how much disruptive your sleep is. So I'm in bed for 9 hours, but still only get 7 to 7.5 hours of sleep. So that's very common, by the way, when we've got a Fitbit that shows you you're in bed, but you're not asleep and you're not in rhythm with your REM cycles. And so you're getting 7.5 hours of sleep. It's not enough. So we've got to try to do something. So yes, you're restless for 2 hours out of that 9 hours. You're restless. You're not sleeping good. So, so getting into deep sleep is the problem and why people are exhausted. So this can help. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of supplements if you want to try them. This energy, B complex, is your energy. Your D, vitamin D, is your mood. Your C is just going to help everything else run in your system. Magnesium is an anti-inflammatory, natural muscle relaxer, going to aid your sleep. And then I'm going to talk about 5-HTP in a minute. So, but here's the caffeine problem. Man, I go back and forth. So here's some fun, just some comical spider. This was 1980s. The NASA did a research on this spider, and this is a famous spider research project where they had a cotton swab and they gave spiders, some LSD and some marijuana and some sleeping pills and caffeine and a benzo. I don't know what benzo. I don't know, but I'm now curious about what kind of benzo they gave them, because there's lots of new benzos since 1980 that have come out. Lots. If you don't know what benzos are, look them up. Yeah. So we hand out those a lot now in our industry. So, but here's what happens. It's comical, right? I just love the caffeine one. It's all over the place. I mean, and then here's sleeping pills. It's just like, but then the marijuana one's pretty like close, but then there's this big gap. So they didn't connect the dots. They stopped. That's pretty typical of the brain, where it just stops and it gets like, so you change directions, like, oh, I think I want to go eat, or I think I want to go do this. And so it obviously, the spider just stopped doing what it was doing and went off to do something else. And the other ones just don't make sense at all. So I think it's kind of funny. So we just have to laugh at it. It's not anything to analyze, just to laugh at. So caffeine, it's the most widely traded substance stimulant next to oil. And that I found that comical because of our oil right now. It's like oil is a hot commodity and it's an expensive one. It's the most unsupervised drug. Battles, and you think about the last 20 years, right, of energy drinks, and that those labels are not correct. You can look up how really off those labels are. They don't have to regulate them, and they don't have to say actually what's in the amount that's in those. Like a 5-hour energy is not even close to what the label says is in there. Okay. It blocks and inactivates tricking receptors. So it tricks. Okay. So it blocks the receptors. That's all you need to know. It peaks 30 minutes after. So what's the problem with that? And this is, he talks about this in this book. So what's the problem? So here's his little diagram of the spiders. So what's, and of course he just was referencing it. What's the difference what's the problem with caffeine consumption peaking at 30 minutes after we consume it? It means that we're going to keep consuming and not get the full effect of that until later. And so we think, so you might keep consuming, and then it's like, then you're overloaded. It has a half-life of 5 to 7 hours. So if you keep consuming, then it stays with us. So after 3 p.m., you just can't use caffeine because it's really going to mess up your circadian rhythm. So let's see, just wondering what your experience is with caffeine. Yeah, I have lots of experience with caffeine. No, just like everyone else, I haven't had a Dr. Pepper since I've had one since the 1st of December, if you want to do my, confessions now. I go on and off, and then I go off, I like my herbal teas, and I like my teas with some little bit of caffeine sometimes, right? So it's just all about how your brain works with caffeine, but really we don't want it. I do better without caffeine. It's like, okay, let's just let the natural flow happen, because this is the problem with caffeine is we add it to our lives. It is not obviously the best thing to consume later in the day. Now, Huberman talks about caffeine. Lots of my research and my classes and my summits I take, we talk about how to kick your adrenal glands even into gear even more. But if you're on circadian rhythm at 10 a.m., you should be at the highest level anyways without caffeine. Because what it does is it blocks it, it tricks it, remember? So it blocks it, and we want that to happen naturally and our normal dopamine levels to be just there. So I talk about dopamine Nation in another workshop that's already on YouTube also. So that was Dopamine Nation. What I'm talking about there is it's called the addictive brain. So I go over caffeine in that. I go over drugs in that. I go over what happens to the addictive brain. I don't go over drugs as specifically, but I go over what happens to the addictive brain. Caffeine increases dopamine by 2.5, and it sends it to a spike. Okay. So when we do that, it spikes us and then it crashes us. And we want our dopamine levels to rise normally, So a small amount of caffeine in the morning and coffee, it's not bad. It actually isn't. So, yeah, what do we do to get our rhythms back on track? So we're going to go over that at the end for sure. But so the point is withdrawal and tolerance for caffeine is a problem, right? So the crash of dopamine, then we like, oh, we have zero motivation in the afternoon, right? So that's where we want to watch this very carefully. I tell people to reduce their caffeine in so many times, because anxiety, dopamine, and adrenals, our stress hormone, it's not good for it. It burns out those receptors because remember, it tricks them, just like an opiate tricks our own pain receptors. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So fun facts there. So here's the supplements. So how we get back on track, okay, is literally doing some exercises at night, not just exercises, but some sleep hygiene exercises. You can do all kinds of things. There's tons to do. This is just a basic list of mental health supplements that help us, okay? And reduces anxiety if you have anxiety at night. And so research, read, and do more reading. You have to do your own research on this. This is just a basic thing. So just a thing. It's just a basic, but they're all research. It's not just, off the top of my head. These are all things that are great for sleep and anxiety. And I forgot to change that. Hops, valerian, and passion flower, licorice root. So it's valerian root. If you want to, go into the gut stuff, then I talk about that, like I said, Monday. So then we heal the gut a little bit better, because if the gut's unhealthy, none of this works. It really doesn't. So we've got to heal the gut. So neurotransmitters, these neurotransmitters right here in the amino acids and the GABA and melatonin, serotonin, dopamine are 80% more than 80% found in the gut. So how do we get our dopamine? How do we get our happy hormone? How do we get 5-HTP? How do we get GABA from the gut and move it? That's the problem. So amino acids you can take over the counter. So for example, I have highlighted here 5-HTP. 5-HTP is a natural neurotransmitter, okay, that moves into that helps move things. It's an amino acid that helps move things. And I'm going to read to you the dosages on it from this book that I don't have referenced in this PowerPoint, but actually, because I just thought, well, I'll just read a little bit about this. But this is the study. Number one, 5-HTP helps you lose weight. Honestly, because you're going to be sleeping through the night. So if you don't sleep through the night and you have insomnia, meaning you wake up multiple times a night, 5-HTP helps you sleep through the night. That means you're not producing enough of your own 5-HTP. GABA is for helping you calm the adrenals and the nervous system. It's for anxiety and sleep too. And so GABA is a really good way, very low dose of GABA, 100 mg to 300 mg. So 5-HTP, weight control strategy, hundreds of people have been on that, and there's tons of research on 5-HTP. So this is the dosages of that. Studies in Italy use 5-HTP as a dosage of 300 mg 3 times a day, but that's for severe cases. So you're really starting with, 100, 200, and then moving up to 300 mg. And it's really only at night you need to take it. So if you're taking it 3 times a day, you move up to that. And we always start in the morning and put, like, vitamin C is every 2 to 3 hours or every meal, and you take quite a large amount of vitamin C during the day. Okay, so 5-HTP, it's basic 100, and you go up to 300. but you can even start as low as 500 mgs 3 times a day. So it says 50 mgs 3 times a day, 30 minutes before meals. And it's going to help your metabolism. So the biggest thing though, I think with all of this, with magnesium studies and everything, my hypothesis is that you sleep better. So when you sleep better, everything gets better. So especially glycisinate, that's the most absorbing magnesium. You can buy citrate in a calm powder for your kids. So that's a little bit of that, and we're running out of time. So melatonin, real quick. Yes, you're going to get this PowerPoint and the recording. If you signed up for this, we're going to send that out to you. You can always get the PowerPoint from me too, and I'll put that in the chat right now of my email. So as we're looking at this slide, go ahead and look at this slide if you have the ability to. I'm just carol@blomquisthill.com with a Y. So that's my email. So the thing is about melatonin is it's not recommended. That's all you need to know. It's not recommended because unless you're on shift work, you're traveling, or it is shown that in autistic kids it helps. So that's a whole other thing. But here's the problem. So look at this. 83% of the labels of melatonin in the grocery store, right, claimed that there was this amount in there, 478% more than stated doses. Does that make sense? Okay, so there was 478% more dosages than stated in the 83% claimed. Okay, so they looked at 83% of these products, and 478% more were in the product. That's really dangerous. That's really awful. Okay, so melatonin sales increased 500% to 62 million in 2003 to 378 million in 2014. That's the last I could find. 2014? Yeah, think of what's happened in the last 5 years with our sleep. So timing. So this is what melatonin does. It starts the race. It's the timing. It helps a little bit, right? Because remember, here's here's a melatonin that sets off from our gut, sends to our brain, says, oh, it's time to sleep because you've turned out the lights. But it has very little influence on running the race. That's why we wake up 3 hours later. So yeah, just look at this. I know a ton of people are using it. We're using it a lot. We're giving it to our children. And it's like, well, it's been a lifesaver. Great. You use it, but use it very small in 0.03 to 0.05 mg in children. Okay. Less is better with melatonin. That's all I'm going to say. It's extremely important that you use less. It's 100 to 10,000 times the amount that our body produces. And that's labeled. So remember, 83% of the labels were wrong. So yeah. And then this other one, out of 31 labels studied, 71% were not within even the 10% of the listed dose. That's horrible. So 80% wasn't even close. I mean, that's just alarming to me. So anyways, that's your fake sleep for you. That will give you some fake sleep. Not a good idea. Here's the power. You have the power. Talk about GABA. We've talked about this using, our blue blocker glasses, everything else. So this is what we can focus on. We frame the way that we view the world. That's what framing means. So we breathe and we focus and then we frame it. Okay. So I'm just going to buzz through these. You're going to get these. There's some fun tips. Okay. So any of these let's see, that I need to explain before this webinar is over. You can ask me some questions after. Mind dumping is not journaling. So there is journaling, great. Mind dumping is dumping out worries and then getting rid of it. You don't read it again, you rip it up, you shred it, you whiteboard it, and then you erase it, okay? Bilateral tapping is a EMDR protocol that I am trained in, and that is EMDR is eye rapid movement, basically in the now. So here's your rapid eye movement, your eyes go back and forth. EMDR is eye rapid and desensitization reprocessing. So it's a way to get rid of our toxins and our trauma. CBT right here is there's a CBT protocol for insomnia. That I is for insomnia. So you do some CBT work with your therapist for insomnia. That is been researched. These two things are researched ways to get to the hemisphere of the brain and using calm techniques to calm the fight, flight, or freeze brain. Okay. Reduce naps, avoid caffeine, alcohol. Let's see, blue blocker glasses. I've gone over all that. Stretch, hygiene, your circadian rhythm. So just making sure that you turn out all lights for at least an hour before you sleep. 2 hours, no food, things like that, and you help your circadian rhythm. Here's some references. Okay, so any questions? Any more questions? You'll get this slide and presentation, and you can always watch it again on YouTube too in about a week or so when we put it on there. So any other questions while you get back to your daily routine, right? Glad to be with you, and I hope this was helpful, and I know it's a lot of information, so you can just kind of soak it in and find, a couple workshops or this book and go further with it if you need to. And the dream part's really interesting in this book too, of course. Dreams are always interesting to me too, but you're welcome. You're welcome. We always like 5 stars. If you want to give us a review on our Orem about our free webinars and help companies understand how valuable these are to you or anyone else. And if you need further help with anything, if you're